Be inspired by the best sales professionals, sales leaders, and coaches in the world of B2B sales. From IT services, medical devices, through to coaching and consulting companies, these principles will help you accelerate your sales performance and growth. Using models from the best-selling book Inspire, Influence, Sell, and award-winning programs from Focus for Growth, you'll have the inside track on the psychology, skills, and systems used by the world's best sales teams. We'll hear from some of the best sales leaders from some of the fastest growing businesses in the world. They don't achieve record-breaking growth by chance. They have a proven sales and leadership approach and a laser focus on growth. You can hear exactly how they do it, one conversation at a time. This is the Inspire Sales Podcast, and I'm your host, Justin Leigh. Welcome to this episode of the Inspire Sales Podcast. Today, I'm talking to Christian Jack. Christian runs a business called the Sales Dojo, and he works as a sales consultant, trainer, and a provider of sales VA services. He's a really interesting guy, young guy, and lots of experience, some really good insights, and shares some really good ideas in this episode about how to start to think differently in sales and how to execute as you go into 2025 and really think about your growth plans. So that's enough from me for now. Let's jump on the other side and I'll see you in the episode with Christian. Welcome to this episode of the Inspire Sales Podcast. I'm really excited today. I've got Christian Jack with me. Christian is, believe it or not, you're not going to believe this when you listen to the episode, but Christian's only 25 years old. He's already generated over $100 million worth of sales. He's worked as a sales professional, sales manager, CRO, and now he is a business owner of the business, the Sales Dojo. And they do all sorts in the Sales Dojo. We're going to get into that in this episode. So Christian, welcome to the episode. Thanks for joining me.
Oh man, Justin, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So Christian, I've given people the headlines. There's a lot more to it than that. Tell us the story. How did you get here? How did you get to where you are today?
Man, it is probably one of the more unlikely stories, but also at the same time pretty boring. So we'll keep it really short. But I went to college for music because I was super passionate about it, and graduated, got a music job. I was a high school choir teacher, actually. So anybody listening who has high school kids, I was their choir teacher at school. And it was great. Like, absolutely love music, absolutely love teaching in general. But I didn't really love the job of teaching at a high school. It was just something about like having to go to the same place every day, do the same thing, right? Like even year after year, the seniors graduate, the freshmen come in, so you teach the same thing that you did to the last freshman class. And it's literally just like the definition of a hamster wheel. And so there's nowhere to go past teaching either. It's just like, you get into teaching, you do it for life. And so then from there, I decided that I had to get out. And I happened upon sales after doing a lot of thinking. This was right after COVID as well. And with COVID, a lot of music teachers, a lot of people had kind of lost their jobs. I was recently married. My wife was a music teacher as well. And so I didn't want us to be in a position where both of us lost our jobs, right? If another COVID were to happen, God forbid. And so I started really doing some thinking. I was like, what is something that I can learn? What is a skill that I can learn that will be COVID proof, right? What's something that will always be needed? What's something that I'll always have a job, I'll always have a place, I'll always be able to make money? And I came down to a few different ideas, and sales was one of them, because I knew there was always going to be the exchanging of goods and services, and 99 times out of 100, there's somebody in the middle that needs to help with that exchange, right? They're not the creator of the goods and services, they're not the buyer, but they're that middleman. And so they don't have to really do a ton of work, just be able to communicate. So I was like, okay, that could be interesting. And I already knew communication was like a big meta skill in life. So I got into sales, right? I started off primarily in the high ticket industry. So I was selling, courses, coaching, influencers, all that kind of good stuff. And basically just invested everything that I earned in sales into training and into mentorship and into coaching. And so I've learned from pretty much every massive sales leader that I can find online, and kind of just grown and grown and sold bigger and bigger packages, became a manager, became a CRO. There's a whole, I mean, it's all really standard from there. Like I just did the next thing is all that happened. So it's kind of boring, but it seems to have worked out.
Well, so what's that? 4 years in, 4 years in,
Yep.
and now you're running your own sales consultancy, the Sales Dojo. Okay,
Yep.
that's good. That's a great progress in
It's
what you
quick.
can is a pretty short period of time. Actually, that's really good.
Yeah, it's quick. I actually had a little bit of imposter syndrome when I was starting the sales dojo. I was like, man, I mean, I learned from people like I had one-on-ones with Jeremy Miner, who's been in for, 20 years, 25 years since he started sales and, one of the best in the world. And so I'm like, man, should I even start this? But then, people like Jeremy and people like Jordan would come to me. They're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, stop second guessing this. You should absolutely do this. So we started it a little over a year ago now. So not too bad.
So okay, very interesting journey actually. You say it's boring. Actually, it's quite interesting. So tell us about what you see. So you've put yourself in the kind of consulting role, which I think is actually, you think about sales roles, right? I think for me there's two most difficult roles in any business. The first is sales,
Mm,
and I think it's the most difficult business role in a business because the buck stops with you in terms of the number,
true.
and you're dealing with internal pressures and demands and external pressures and demands. You're dealing with customers.
Yeah.
You are going to face more no's than you face yeses, because we all do in
Yeah.
sales. If you think about the average, you think about a good kind of close rate on a sales team, it's
Hmm.
somewhere between 25 to 40%. In some
Yeah.
businesses where you're getting really good marketing qualified leads, it might be higher. But
Sure.
most of the time, you're going to face more no's than you face yeses. So sales is, you're right, really at the cold face of the business. I think then the second most difficult role in a business, if it's not the most difficult, is sales leadership. So you've kind
Hmm.
of got through both of those. And then I think actually being a self-employed business owner, especially in this sales arena, is even more difficult because you're selling to people who are really good at sales. So you kind of
Yep.
you're increasing the intensity of the difficulty as you go along, which I love, and I've been on the same journey. So tell us a bit about your clients and the work that you do with them, and because our listener, so let's look at it through the lens of our listener. Our listener is a high performing sales professional, really looking for the edge. They're looking for those key principles and the areas of differentiation that are going to make them even
Mm.
better at what they do. So tell us a bit about when you meet that demand, Christian. What do you do?
Man, I would say so within the Sales Dojo, we run a sales training community, right? And so it's full of some of the best sales professionals in the world. We have top reps at some of the, I won't say names because that probably is against NDAs and such, but some of like the top companies, you would recognize their names. We have some really good reps in there. And we talk about everything from like the very beginning basics all the way up through very advanced strategies. And the dojo kind of follows, what's interesting is the belt system, like in martial arts.
Yeah.
So martial arts, you come in, you start as a white belt, you're brand new. And then you learn a couple of things, you pass a couple of tests, you become a yellow belt, and then you become a green belt, so on and so forth. So like in black belt, we go through things like hypnosis, embedded commands, high level profiling stuff. And so I think when you're talking about getting an edge, there's so many ways that you can get an edge, and it's so specific to each person. If you speak to somebody who's, for example, really, really good at connecting with prospects and building rapport, their edge is going to be a bit different than somebody who maybe is less good at rapport, but
Yeah.
is really good like in the paint when it comes to objections and actually coming to the close, or maybe different from somebody who's able to really pull out the emotions from their prospects. So I think it's understanding more than anything, if you're looking for an edge, like where do you lack the most and how can you improve that, right? That's basically what we try to focus on.
Yeah. And how do you gauge that how do you assess that?
So the biggest thing is number one, just teaching a little bit of self-awareness. So the beginning modules in the Sales Dojo, everybody starts at white belt, whether they like it or not. And the reason is because we go through all of this and how to basically do self-audits and self-score on how well you're doing at things fairly objectively. So basically we give this whole training set on how to diagnose the reasons that you're losing sales. And usually it is kind of a reverse engineering process. So, you've probably done a million sales calls, Justin, so you'll understand this. When you lose a deal or a deal doesn't close, let's just say that could have closed. And you have to be really objective with that too, but we won't get into that. If you know the deal could have closed, but it didn't, why? Like, what is the singular reason why that happened at the very end of the call? Maybe it's that, they needed to run it by their lawyers and you didn't really tie that down earlier in the call, right? What is the thing that happened before that caused like that objection, if you will, to happen? Right. Same thing if it's a price objection, right? If they say, oh, that's too expensive, like, why did that happen? What was the root cause of it? And essentially you can back trace it a couple of steps, usually 3, 4, sometimes 5 steps to earlier in the call where you didn't ask a question that you needed to ask. You missed something that changed in their body language when you gave an answer to a question they had. Maybe it was just some sort of tonality issues that the prospect had that you didn't notice. So it can go back to a lot of different things, but the basic reverse engineering process, I think, is the easiest way to diagnose. You start with the most obvious glaring issue, and then you work your way backwards to like, what were the things that actually added up? What were the dominoes that were stacked up in place that ultimately led to that last one?
Yeah. So you don't want to be, because really what you're saying is you don't want to be dealing with symptoms. You want to be dealing with root cause. What actually is the problem, not what's presenting, i.e. the customer's too expensive or whatever the reason. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And that's interesting. That's really interesting. I like the idea, and I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that kind of reverse engineering principle. But it's not such an obvious thing to focus on. So I like that. Yeah, I like that. Just asking yourself that question to track back. What was it you missed that led to that happening?
Yep.
Yeah, nice self-coaching. Nice. No, I really like that. So that's some of the things that you're working on. What are some of the common kind of challenges that you see, or some of the common errors that you see in the clients that you work with, or the clients that come to you? They're trying to. Normally, people come to people like you and me, Christian. They're trying to fix something. What are the kind of common things that you see your clients trying to fix?
I would say probably there's 2 main groups of people. Yeah. There's people who will come with a problem that they need fixed, and the problems they need fixed are usually more surface level. Like, they're just, if it's an individual sales rep, maybe they're just struggling with one certain type of objection and they just want to like get some coaching on that one thing. Maybe it's that they're not working with a very high quality business, and so they're coming into network to potentially get in with another business. It could be a couple of different things. But more often than not, I would say that people actually come to the Sales Dojo for an energy shift. Right. It's one of the things that I would say is very unique about the dojo, in that, like, to some extent, tactics, strategies, word tracks, frameworks, etc. Like, I can teach you how to handle that objection that you're struggling with. I can, teach you how to do this. But at the end of the day, I truly believe that those are still just symptoms of the root cause. That is usually your energy and the vibes that you're giving off to people. And I'm not a very, like, what I would consider a woo-woo person. Like, I'm very straightforward, logical. I don't put a ton of emphasis on those things, but they do make a really big difference. And so the biggest problem that I see salespeople having when they come in and they think the problem is this other thing, it's actually the internal beliefs and the mindsets that they have and that they hold within their own life. And those are actually, more often than not, easier to fix.
Tell us a bit about that, Christian. That's you've kind of told us a little bit. Mindset, energy, attitude. Tell us what you see and how you try. Yeah.
So I'll give an example. One of the biggest things that people always come in with that's surface level that they want help with is dealing with objections, right? It's the most glaring issue. It's the most obvious reason why you're losing deals. And so naturally you want to work on that thing. And so I can teach you how to handle a price objection. I can teach you how to handle the lawyers and the agreements and like the sales cycle, blah, 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 blah. But if I can teach you instead how to see concepts from both sides of the coin, you will be able to handle any objection. So I'll give you an example. Just like face value, Justin, like don't think too much about it. Murder, is it good or bad? Bad, right? Like 99.9, maybe not 100%, maybe 99.9% of people will say that it's bad, right?
Yeah.
But now, can you think of an instance where we still sanction the taking of another human's life?
Yeah.
Maybe it's the death penalty. Maybe it's when dealing with, terrorist organizations that systematically go and, rape 10-year-old girls or whatever it might be. Like, there are still instances where the average, I would even say American, but the average human would say that taking a life might actually be the best option in those scenarios. And so it's a really, really extreme example, but you can take anything there. Let's take, have you ever heard the phrase success loves speed?
Yeah.
So lots of people, lots of salespeople will like try to tout that on an objection handling. If somebody says they like want to think about it or something, they'll just try to rebuttal like with, well, success loves speed. Successful people move quickly. Like, do you want to be successful? Blah, blah, blah. Like, not exactly. Because the other side of the coin is more preparation often also leads to more success. And so once you can start to look at every single concept in your life and at even objections, right? If we're going down that path from both sides of the coin, then it doesn't matter what a prospect says because you can help them think through both sides of the equation. And then you use framing skills to be able to help them decipher which one is the right decision or how to actually help them move the deal forward if it's the best thing for them, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay, so that's handling objections and thinking about that. You also talked about like energy and the mindset that people have. Tell us a bit about what you discover there and what you help people with.
So, I mean, that's just one of the basic mindset that I teach people that relates to that is things are rarely black and white. So there's 10 like core values, basically mindsets of the dojo that we go over very, very often inside, and it's what leads to sales success. So another example is volume negates luck. So the more repetitions that you do in a task or something, the less lucky you have to be in order to achieve an outcome, right? If you are wanting to, close 10 deals this week, what are the inputs that need to be done in order to get there? And the more volume you put in, the less lucky you're going to have to be in order to make 10 deals happen, right? So, I mean, the mindsets can go really, really deep, and there's a ton of different things that go into it. Basically, the entirety of Yellow Belt is all about that.
Right, getting the right foundational mindset in place. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've had that similar experience. There's also the saying, when you're on a roll, keep going, right? Because in sales, when you're on a winning streak, you take a level of confidence and energy into every conversation that transmits confidence to your client. This person knows what they're doing. They're
Absolutely.
successful, they're winning, they can help me get the same result. Whereas if you have a run of bad luck or you have a run of no's, and when you think about, I often think about and I talk to my clients about this. When you consider, we said earlier about, let's say you get 30% close rate, right? That means every 10 deals you get 3 yeses, but you get 7 no's, right? What happens if you get a succession of, what happens if you get 2 lots of 7 no's on the bounce?
Yeah.
But then you might get 6 yeses.
Yeah, 6. Right? Yeah.
So all of a sudden you've got 14 no's, but it's getting through those 14 no's with the right attitude and maintaining a level of confidence and positivity and motivation that enables 100%. You to break through that period of what seems like a negative result, but actually is just you working the process and doing the volume in order to get through to the yeses. It's so important we get this in sales because I think there's a lot of people find themselves in very difficult situations when they don't have that mindset around, okay, this is a process, whether it's volume negates luck or it's actually thinking about how do I maintain a level of positivity and motivation regardless of what's happening in each sales conversation or client conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I think confidence is something that everybody knows plays a really important part in sales. But I don't think people understand how to actually exude confidence and how to be able to turn it on and off as much as possible, because, in some senses it's something that you can't really control, right? It's an internal feeling rather than an external, outflowing of it, if you will. But there are certain things that you can do, even if like you're in a slump. If I can talk about that just for a second, I guess, since we're going there. Please, yeah. So like if you want to be seen as confident, one of my favorite just simple tips that I've been taught by a guy, his name is Chase Hughes. He's by far like the world's most renowned behavioral specialist. Government agencies with 3 letters hire him to go and teach literal spies. That's insane. So one of the things that he taught me was move like you're underwater. Anytime that you're moving, you are doing some sort of hand gesture, even nodding, even your eyes blinking should almost move as slowly as if you're underwater. Like if you've ever, been to the beach and you're trying to like walk out against the waves, like your legs move a little bit more slowly than they do through the air. It's the same exact thing. So if you feel yourself getting anxious, or if you feel yourself maybe losing a little bit of that confidence, just like take a deep breath and slow down and move almost like you're underwater. That alone has probably made me like an extra, I don't know, a lot of money.
So literally just slowing the body down. Same with the thoughts, right? So perhaps slowing the mind down, slowing the thoughts down.
Think about have you ever seen a Chihuahua operate? Like just running around, barking, biting, like it moves so quickly, so jumpy. But then if you compare that to like Australian Shepherd or a Mastiff or some sort of really big dog, the big dog just like flops around and doesn't give a shit about anything. And just like, hey, what's going on? And
you're saying become a big dog.
Exactly. Don't be the Chihuahua, right? The anxious salesperson who has no confidence is the Chihuahua. And like it's built into our human instincts, right? All of us have these things built into our mammalian and reptilian brains to where if you see somebody moving like a Chihuahua, like that quickly jittery energy, it automatically triggers your brain to think certain things. So like it doesn't even matter the words that you say. A lot of the time, it's just your nonverbal communication, your body language, your tonality. That's what's losing the deal probably like 98% of the time, I would say, to be honest. It doesn't matter as much what you say because your brain processes all of this nonverbal communication so much more quickly than your words.
Yeah. That's an interesting tip that I've never heard that. Move like you're underwater. I'll remember that.
It's great.
It's really, really interesting. I mean, some of the things that I see a lot with clients are, those moments where people do have a run of bad luck. And, actually December's one of those months, isn't it? So this episode will be released just before Christmas. So, this is a time of year where people do stop and reflect. And I don't know about you, Christian. My experience is that a lot of people during the month of December can start to feel a little bit disturbed because how many customers say, well, actually, we're going to wait until the new year now. Or, no, we're so busy in the run up to Christmas, we don't have time for thinking about new projects or new ideas or making new decisions. Everything's going to have to wait till the new year. So December can be a really tricky month for sales professionals. And then get through to January, and getting hold of people is really difficult because they're like, oh, we're in startup mode, or we're just getting things back on track, or so you end up with this 4 to 6 week period that can be really difficult to navigate. And actually, taking that time to think about how do I reset myself, how do I reset the way that I'm going to approach my sales in 2025 so that I become more in control. I think, as you were talking about slowing down, it made me think of having a greater sense of self-control as part of my approach.
Again, I think the thing that can help people, especially in this time of year, quite a bit is the It's that dojo value of things are rarely black and white. If you get somebody who says, you know, let's just say, you know, we're in startup mode. It's like,
Yeah.
well, startup mode is the most important time to be able to get the right things in place so that you can be prepared for X and Y and Z. Like there's a lot of different things, and it all comes back to, I think, that mindset of things are rarely black and white, because you can navigate a lot of really tricky things in life, because life is tricky. You know, like there's very rarely a absolute answer to anything in life. I have seen seminars hours long about how 2 + 2 doesn't even equal 4. Like things, there's very few things in life where there's one absolute correct answer, and it's not regarding your business. Guarantee it.
Yeah. Well, and I think sales is particularly difficult because you're dealing with people, right? And people are,
Of course,
by their nature, emotional
people are
beings.
people.
Yeah, they're unpredictable. They're not always consistent. They'll tell you one
Yep.
thing but mean another. And actually being able to differentiate yourself between what's the truth and what isn't, being able
Yep.
to create that trust and respect from people so that they will open up and tell you what's really happening,
Yeah.
remembering to ask all the right questions and understand what's really important for that customer. All of these things, on the surface, you kind of think, well, how hard can it be? But actually, it's more difficult than it is simple. That's the thing.
Yep.
And it's about having, from your perspective and from mine, I guess, having a structure, having a plan so that you can go about that in a way that is going to give you the very best chance of
Hmm.
succeeding and unlocking the difficult elements of the customer conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people, at least in my space, and I know some people are maybe a little bit different. I've seen a lot of hype out there on social media lately about like getting away from the script in sales.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen the same, but I think with that, like the intentions are good. When you get to more advanced levels, you use more of these frameworks and you do scripts.
Yeah.
But if you are, I can't use like years of experience because I mean, I'm one to talk, but I've invested into getting time back. So I think beginning salespeople, having those frameworks, having those scripts, having those processes is 100% necessary. And then even as you go along, there's still a process, right? There's still a framework. Like I'm still going
Yeah.
to get into, you know, the logical and logistics sort of things in the call before I get into the emotional impact that it's had on them or their family or anything like that.
Yeah.
So there's still a process, but as long as you don't lose sight of the fact that there's a process and everything, then yeah, I would agree, 100%.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. I have a variation of different clients that I work with. Some of them like scripts or prompts
Hmm.
so that their team have a guide. So they know
Hmm.
that what they're doing is formulaic and it's actually going to follow a structure. For
Yep.
more experienced people, exactly as you said, they tend to use frameworks or processes rather than a script. They might have,
Hmm.
I need to make sure that I follow these steps, and I might track back on some of the steps and just make sure that I've got a process that I know is going to deliver the result. But I think
Yep.
without until you've become experienced enough, actually having those models is really valuable. I mean, I've been
Hmm.
in one sales role or another for coming up for 30 years, and
Mm.
I still use a framework, and I
Yeah.
remember, and it's embedded in my head. So
Yeah.
I use those steps, and if ever I detract from that framework, if I'm having a conversation with a friend, for example, who client might say to, and it's someone I've known a long time, and,
Yeah.
and you end up in a normal conversation, then I'm like, hold on a minute, Justin, you're not following the framework, and that's why it's kind of gone adrift. So
Yep.
you do have to bring yourself back, and it's like anything. If there's a formula for what works, then that's the most effective way to structure to something. And sales is exactly that, isn't it? In fact, I would say it's more important in sales because as it's not as structured as a lot of other roles.
Yep. 100%.
Mm,
100%.
yeah. So tell us a bit about, tell us a bit about how you handle, challenging times yourself, Christian, because we talked about December being a challenging time for a lot of sales professionals, and it's the same, in a lot of businesses where you get to the end of the year, you've worked hard all year, you've got a bit of hopefully a bit of downtime coming as we hit the the festive period, but throughout the year, and you've set up a new business, you've made this transition from one profession to another, you've had a lot of experience in the last 5 years or so. So throughout that, there will have been those moments where you were like thinking, God, am I really doing the right thing? Or you talked about imposter syndrome a bit earlier, but
100%.
also, God, this is harder than I thought. I'm having to work harder than I thought. Tell us how you manage yourself through those more difficult, challenging times. What do you do for yourself?
I think there's two sides to that coin, right? The first one that I want to make sure to go over is understanding that like your goal is really worth it, right? If you're coming into sales for the purpose of like getting out of sales and going and doing this other thing, like just make sure that you keep that in mind. If your goal is to come into sales and like be the best salesperson in the world, then like that's a very different answer, right? But I think regardless of any of that, one of my favorite quotes is that goals are not targets, they're not destinations. More often than not, the goals that we set in our lives are horizons. And every step closer to the goal that you take is another step further that the goal runs away. Like if you've ever been in a position where, you just want to get to where you're making six figures, just as an example.
Yeah.
Then you get to making six figures. Then you're like, well, this isn't all that I thought it would be. Now I want to make seven figures, right? And you go to seven figures and you want to make eight. Like every step that you take closer to it is another step further that, that desire runs away, if you will. The goal always gets bigger. And so if you can accept that and understand that the achievement of this arbitrary goal is never going to satisfy you, right? The goal then becomes the person that is crafted along the journey, right? What is the goal actually when you get to, let's say somebody wants to make $1 million a year. Like, why do you want to make $1 million? So I can have the house, so I can have the car, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but like really what would change in your day to day? Would you literally sit down at the same desk, do the same thing for the same 8 hours, after work, do the same things? Like, no, that would change. And so people usually realize that they would want to spend more time with family. They would want to, be a better husband, father, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, great. So what does that mean? Well, I would want to be more patient. I would be more loving. I would have more energy to give to my family. And so then once you have all of that, it's really interesting. Well, if you want to be a more patient person, what is it that makes a person patient? It's their patience being tested. When somebody wants to, make more money in their life, what is it that they have to go through in order to make more money? Well, they have to go through times where they're maybe not making as much money as they want to, and they need to be more creative. And so if your goal is like this thing out in the future, the things that you experience now are the things that craft that person. And so if you're going through a slump, if you're going through a tough time, if you are going through a time where you're questioning all your life decisions, right? Thinking, should I just like go back to my old job or whatever? I would say just remember, and this is the thing that's gotten me through pretty much everything, is realizing that the hard things that you're going through now are crafting the version of you that you want to be in the future. So like stop wishing for those hard times to end, because they're crafting the new version of you. But then also, one of my favorite quotes, have you read Atomic Habits by James Clear?
Yeah, James
fairly
Clear, yeah.
common book. One of my favorite quotes from it is that the beauty of the stars would be invisible without the vast darkness of space behind them. So basically he goes on to say, like, don't wish away the difficult portions of life because they provide the necessary contrast to appreciate the joyful ones. So like, yeah, you might be going through a shit time. Yeah, you might not know what to do. Yeah, you might be struggling. Yeah, you might have all of these beliefs going through your head, but like realistically, it's necessary in order for the good times to feel so good, and it crafts the new version of you that you want to be. I could go on and on about that stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's perspective, isn't it? It's about having perspective in those moments,
Always. Your
recognizing that
perspective is your
actually,
power.
yeah, you're able to then do more, be more resilient, or whatever it is that you're looking to develop in yourself. Yeah, I love that. There's a Jim Rohn quote I often recall, and I share with clients, and the it's about goal setting. So it said the purpose of goals is to make you become the person who is capable of achieving them, and that is
Yep.
that in the moments whenever I find myself in those situations, I remind myself of that quote. I'm like, yeah, this is about building the resilience so that I'm the sort of person that can overcome this issue in the future. And it's
Yep.
amazing how that reframe helps you feel so much better in the moment.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean you're never going to have the challenges or never going to feel like you have, bumps in the road or you have your down
Yeah.
day. But actually, it's about finding that sense of perspective. I noticed something about you, Christian. You're very often thinking about, you kind of say there's two things. There's always two things, which is that
Mhm.
your ability to reframe almost everything is really, I really like that, because there's
I think
always a second
framing,
option.
yeah, framing is probably one of the biggest skills I think in sales, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I've definitely put a lot of work into it, and of course, framing things for other people, but more so it's framing it for myself, right?
Mm.
It's like my brain can only handle so much information at one time. I have to figure out how to put it into boxes that it understands, and
Yeah.
if you can do that for yourself, then you can definitely do it for other people too.
Yeah. Yeah, reframing is a really valuable way of doing that, and perhaps people haven't heard that term before, but it is. You mentioned it earlier, where if you've got a customer that says, we're in the middle of kicking off and stuff, and actually, rather than then looking at that as an objection, you say, "That's great. It's a perfect time to do it then, as you're getting the foundations in place." You're always reframing and helping customers to reframe as you have
Yeah.
those different conversations, and it actually it gives your customer a new perception as well. That's the whole idea, isn't it? As you say, you reframe for yourself, then you're able to reframe for the customer. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
It's so interesting. I feel like sales is the ultimate personal development because you learn how the mind works and how to nudge it in different directions.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important because like when you're selling, I was talking to somebody this morning. They're selling a software, right, for companies that will basically help their employees to like work less and be able to achieve more, et cetera, et cetera. But like it's not about the software. Like, yes, you need to cover, of course, all the different things that it does for the company and like the upside that you get from being able to implement it and like how that would relieve some headaches for you as the manager and not having to oversee all those things and like what would you do with that extra time, like all that stuff. But then what it really comes down to is like, what impact does that have in terms of this person's goals and the future that they're envisioning for their life? Like how does that fit in? And again, I think it all comes back to you because sales, while you're influencing other people, oftentimes it takes like taking care of somebody else in order to really start to take care of yourself. Like we take care of other people way more than we do ourselves. I know for me, like my cat who's sitting over here on the the sofa. Stupid example. My cat needed to go to the vet. Like immediately took the cat to the vet. But when I have some sort of ailment going on, I'm like, I'm fine. Like I don't need it, right? But sales, in order to be successful, you have to care so much about the other person and listen to the other person so much and hear them out and figure out what their goals are and like connect all the dots for them in order for you to then make money. I think it's just the ultimate personal development because life is all about helping other people achieve what it is they want.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
that's how you get successful.
people don't necessarily draw that immediate conclusion when it comes to sales.
Yeah,
There's a great book by a guy called Bob Berg called The Go Giver,
I've heard
and
of it. Yeah.
it's all
I think I
about
have
sales.
it over here.
It's about creating. Oh, you've got it's all about creating value early in the conversation, demonstrating value, making sure that the customer is at the heart or the client is at the heart of
Hmm.
conversation and your intention. And
Yeah.
when you've got pressure in the background to hit targets, to meet quotas, to hit call rates and build an opportunity pipeline, you've got all that going on. Sometimes inadvertently you kind of get sidetracked and you end up on your own agenda. And it's a really good reminder to people, as we go into 2025, make it more about the client, make it more about the value you create, and that will be rewarded in those conversations that you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really good. I love that, Christian. So Christian, where can people find you? If people want to connect with you, if they want to find out about the Sales Dojo, but also find out a bit more about you, where's the best place for them to find you?
Well, I'll tell you, if you're just looking to like DM me, probably Facebook is my most active, but I'm pretty much everywhere on every social media. I will also, I know usually you provide like the link in the show notes and everything, so it'll be down there. But I've put together a little something just for people who are listening to this or watching this that want to learn a little bit more. So there'll be like a free thing on there. It's a cheap thing. There's a couple of ways that you can kind of get in touch and learn more about everything that we're doing over there at the Sales Dojo.
Okay, I will put those links in the show notes to this episode, Christian, and people can then just follow them through and either connect with you or contact you or check out the resources as well. Brilliant. Christian, anything else that you'd like to cover before we close this episode?
I don't think so. Maybe just one last closing note. I think the most important thing that we covered is making sure that you're serving other people, because any time in life that you want to succeed, you can't do it on your own. Other people are required. The biggest movements in the world are full of a bunch of people working towards the same goal. And so if you in sales want to be more successful, you have to learn how to help other people succeed in their goals. And if you can do that, you'll make a ridiculous amount of money and be ridiculously happy in the meantime. Yeah,
it's a great closing note to end on. That really is. So as people go into 2025, just have that in mind. How do perhaps a recurring theme for people next year? How do I create even more value? How do I help even more customers to get the results and outcomes they're looking for? And that will reward you with the success and growth that you're looking for. Brilliant message. Thanks, Christian. Thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for sharing so openly. As I say, I'll put the links to all the resources in the show notes so people can make contact and get access to Sales Dojo and all of the assets that you have available. Thanks so much. Wishing you every success next year in your sales journey as well, Christian. And hopefully we'll keep in touch and maybe even have you on a future episode to hear how things are going in the future.
Likewise.
All right. Thanks, Christian. Take care. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Christian, and hopefully you're starting to think about your own plans for 2025. Do start to think about the changes that you need to make. You'll all remember the 7 habits of highly effective people, and habit number 7 is sharpen the saw. In our Inspire sales methodology, the final stage of our sales process is reflect and improve. So we're really starting to think about this process. This is a great time of year to be thinking about the changes and improvements you need to make in 2025 to make it your best year ever. Wish you every success in doing so. Thanks for listening to this episode. Thanks for your support for the podcast. And I look forward to seeing you and speaking to you in lots of episodes in future. Have a great finish to the year, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care. Genuine thanks for listening to the Inspire Sales Podcast. We hope you enjoy learning some of the most cutting-edge sales techniques and getting close to some of the greatest sales leaders in the world now and in the future. If you'd like to explore further, please feel free to visit our website, focusforgrowth.co.uk. And if you'd like to take our Sales Acceleration Scorecard and discover your sales and influencing score, then check out the show notes for the link in the bio. If you have enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button. If you know people in your sales and leadership network that you think would like to listen to, then please share this episode with them. I'd be very grateful. If you'd like to get in touch with me, please feel free to do so. If you have suggestions for further guests, or if you'd like to appear yourself, please contact me or my team. You can connect with me. I'd love to hear from you. My social profiles are in the show notes, and I look forward to being with you on the next episode. Thanks again for listening. See you soon.